this fifth passage is a conflicting viewpoints passage. So you're going to have 4 students that have a different viewpoint. The scenario is that there are 3 types of flowers, A, B, and C, at their school, and they notice that the bees only visit type A flowers. So the students looked at the characteristics of those flowers and came up with some explanations as to why, kind of some hypotheses here. So when you're doing these passages, it's a very good idea to think about what the main idea of each student is. So I wrote that in brown here. The main idea of student 1 was that the bees have a preference in color. Student 1 says that the bees prefer blue flowers. Student 2 said the bees have a preference for shape and that they prefer star-shaped flowers, or the ones that look like type A. Student 3 says that bees have a preference for flowers with a dark center. So they have a center of the flower that is darker. And student 4 says that bees have a preference for flower scent, and that type A flowers have a scent, but B and C do not have a scent, so that's why they're not attracted to them. And then there was Table 1 had 4 different flower types that we're going to use later to make some predictions. For number 18, it says, which of the students, if any, claim that bees are more likely to have a preference for type C flowers than for type B flowers? So basically, did any students say that type C flowers are going to have a preference over type B flowers? Now, there's no student that said that those shapes of B and C are shapes that the bees will be attracted to. Student 2 said that they do have a preference for shape, but that preference is for the type A flowers, the star type flowers. So no student said anything about shape except for student 2, and it's not what student 2 said. It doesn't support what his or her hypothesis was, so 18 is J. For number 19, it says, which of the following diagrams best represents a type Z flower? So we need to look at what a type Z flower is. So in table 1 here, it's blue, has a star shape, has no dark center, and is scented. So since it's blue, then it must have at least some kind of shaded region here, so we can eliminate A and C. And it doesn't have a dark center, so D is not a correct answer there. So we're left with B is the only one that fits that description. 20 says that if bees were allowed to visit the test bed, student 3 would predict that the bees would most likely visit which 2 flower types. Now student 3 mentioned that bees prefer a dark center. So if we look at table 1, we need to find out which of those had a dark center. The only 2 that did were X and Y. So student 3 would say type X and type Y. So 20 was H. 21 says, which of the following best describes how plants that produce type A flowers benefited from being visited by the bees? The plants benefited because the bees were carrying what? Now it's asking about the plants benefiting because the bees are carrying something. The plants don't benefit from nectar going from flower to flower. The bees are benefiting from the nectar. The flowers are benefiting from pollen. And so A says pollen from flower to flower, allowing reproduction to occur. You should know that pollen is part of the reproduction process with plants. C says pollen from flower to flower, allowing for photosynthesis to occur. Now, pollen has nothing to do with photosynthesis, so the only logical answer here is A. 22 says, suppose that when bees visited the test bed, they only visited type W and type Z flowers. If this were true, the findings would best support who? So we got to look at type W and type Z flowers and look at their characteristics. So what those 2 types of flowers have in common is that they're both star-shaped and they're both scented. So you need to think back to the main ideas of those students who supported the idea that bees have a preference for stars. That was student 2. And who supported the idea that the bees are attracted to scented flowers. That was student 4. So student 4 and student 2 would support that idea. 23 says, consider the blue unscented flower illustrated below. So it's blue, it's got kind of more complex star shape, and it has a dark center. So which two students would most likely predict that the bees would prefer this type of flower over type C flowers? Well, so it's blue, it's unscented, and it has a dark center. Now remember, student 1 said that blue flowers were preferred by the bees, and student 3 said that dark centers were preferred by the bees. Student 2 had a preference for shape, and they said that that star shape was preferred. And student 4 said that a scent was preferred. Now, this was unscented, so it can't support student 4, so D is not a good option. And student 2 said it supports the star shape, the simple star shape, which is not the case here. This is a more complex star shape. So since it doesn't support student 2, C and A are both bad answers. Only students 1 and 3 would support or would predict that this type of flower would be preferred over type C. So 23 was B.